This morning we are concluding our short series represented by this sign up here, Know, Love, and Serve. And these words are, of course, taken from our congregation's mission statement. They're the part of the mission statement where the rubber meets the road, as they say. This phrase describes what we're doing as a church, helping our neighbors know, love, and serve Jesus Christ. My prayer is that we will all know Christ, and because of what he's done for us, will love him, and because of that, will naturally desire what Jesus desires, to do what he does, to engage with Jesus' mission in this world, serving him. It is pointless to have a mission statement if you don't know it and review it and seek to put it into action. And that's why we're doing this for these 3 weeks, reviewing who we are as a church, where we're going, and in the final analysis, in my thinking, it's all about mission. Specifically, it's really about that last word, serve. Mission is what we're about. We're not alone in this. Sorry about that. I'm trying to put this farther back, Dustin, so it doesn't do that. But we're not alone in this being about mission. Some larger congregations actually they have a designated staff position for missions, just as you would have a pastor of education or a pastor of youth and family, pastor of outreach. Some churches have a pastor of mission. Recently, I heard of one such church. They had a pastor of mission, and a woman walked into the church office and got her words mixed up and said to the receptionist, "I have an appointment with the minister of passion." Whoa, really, a minister of passion? Okay. Actually, we might do well to have some of those. It actually raises a question for me. Can our ministry, could our mission ever be described as passionate? Would the people in Marysville and the surrounding areas who know about this congregation, if we ask them what our church was passionate about, how would they answer? Would they answer, "Oh yeah, Mountain View, that's that church that's passionate about mission"? Would they? If the people who know you the best were asked what you are passionate about, what would be their answer? Would it be anything to do with faith and your mission? I come from a big family. I'm the youngest of 8 kids. My mom and dad had their hands full, as you can imagine. My dad, I wish you could have known my dad. He died before really most of you kind of had gotten to know us, but he died in 1999. He was a character. He was really funny. He was always the life of the party kind of guy. You know, when you're a father of 8 and someone asks you the question, his name was Dwight. They would say, "Dwight, how many kids do you have?" And he would just kind of answer nonchalantly, "Oh, I have 8." You're just baiting them for the next question. You know what the next question is? Are you Catholic? Are you Catholic or Mormon? And his answer was classic. He was just waiting to be able to say, "No, we're passionate Presbyterians." Sometimes he would use another word instead of passionate, but I heard passionate. Passionate Presbyterians. Well, it's funny because it's an oxymoron, isn't it? I mean, let's face it, our tradition is not known for being passionate. Deliberate? Yes. Learned? Uh-huh. Stoic? Yep. But passionate? We're not known for that. I remember reading a paragraph in a book called A Generous Orthodoxy by Brian McLaren, and it caught my attention. It's in the chapter entitled Why I'm Evangelical. And he's describing why he has an affinity with an evangelical heritage. Now, to be very careful to point out here that this is evangelical with a small e. He's not talking about the term as some use it to describe the religious right, or others who equate evangelicalism to fundamentalism. No, this is evangelicalism in the sense of those who, among other things, they want to share their faith with others. These are people who have a passion for those who have not heard the good news. Those who we might call the lost, because they haven't found yet faith in Christ. Evangelical. So McLaren writes this, and I want to quote this. When I say I cherish an evangelical identity, I mean something beyond a belief system or a doctrinal array or even a practice. I mean an attitude. An attitude toward God and our neighbor and our mission that is passionate. When evangelicals, at their best, sing, they sing. When evangelicals pray, they pray. When evangelicals preach, they preach. And when evangelicals decide something is worth doing, they do it. They don't need to establish committees to study the feasibility of doing it. They don't ask permission from the bureaucracy to do it. They don't get a degree that qualifies them to do it. They just do it, and with passion. So a generalization, yeah, it is. But for me, it created a contrast. In the margin of that book, right there, I wrote, unlike my tradition. This kind of passion is a beautiful thing when you see it in action. We've known some people in our lives who lived this way. One couple in particular was Jim and Bev Vaughn, who introduced us to our village in Africa. I remember being at the 59er Diner. How many of you know about the 59er Diner? Yeah, it's on Cole's Corner on the way to Leavenworth. We were there with Jim and Bev, and we had this waitress. Her name was Flo. Inside joke. They all have the same name tag. They all say Flo. Anyway, but she was there at the table, and Jim engaged with her in a way that was so interesting. By like the third or fourth sentence, he was asking the question, well, why did you stop going to church? I mean, I don't know, they got there so quickly. But he was just engaging with this young woman about her life, and she just started telling him at the table there with all of us sitting there, her life story. And this is the way Jim lived. I've seen him do it over and over again. He had this ability to show a deep love and interest in people to the point where they just started talking about really important things immediately. It's a beautiful thing when you see it in action, when someone is passionate this way. I had this experience a few years ago. I attended a funeral of an elderly woman that we had known. She was actually the mom of one of our good friends. And now, I understand I'm a bit uncomfortable when I attend weddings and funerals when I'm not in charge. I don't know. I guess I have just really strong feelings about how to officiate at weddings and funerals. And anyway, I was already kind of squirming in my seat when we first arrived. I knew that this was a theologically conservative group that we were gathering with, and I was prepared to endure one of my most unfavorite things, which is when an opportunity to stand as a witness to the resurrection in a funeral is co-opted into a high-pressure sales pitch aimed at rounding up a few converts. So as you can see, I went into this with a kind of an attitude. What I experienced, though, was something completely different. These folks did a great job of celebrating the life that this elderly woman who had died had lived, but you also just knew that they cared. They cared that everyone is prepared for the day they die. People got up and spoke, and then some of them led us in prayer, and each one, especially when the people prayed, these people were obviously passionate about the lost. And their manner was so gentle and caring. There wasn't an altar call or a repetition of the words some of us heard Sunday after Sunday early in our church lives. With every head bowed and every eye closed. Slip your hand up. No, there wasn't anything like that. But there was this loving sense of inclusion. Does that make sense? This is something lovely we have in our lives. We have found this. Come and join us with this. That's what it felt like. It was as if they had found the best, the most lovely thing to believe in, and they wanted others to know about it. I don't know. I'm having a hard time really describing how I felt. But this I know. It almost made me want to pretend I was lost, so that I could hear more about it. It seemed so urgent and so real the way they presented it. I left that funeral wondering, how can we express that as a congregation in our life together? How can we be a church passionate about that? A few years ago, our presbytery hosted a speaker named Reggie McNeil. He was passionate about the mission of the church. So much so that I bought a couple of his books, and I read through them, and I had a nagging question in my mind as I was reading that question. How can we be a church with that kind of passion? I was catching a vision for it, but I just didn't know how. He talked about being a people of blessing. He wrote about creating a culture of mission in our congregations. And I wondered if I'm thinking about Mountain View here. I was wondering if we care enough about the lost to be motivated to this. I wondered if I cared enough. And here is where I came to this text that we heard this morning. This is a long way around to get back to the text. But this is where these words from the apostle help me, and they challenge me. Verse 14 of our text, and I hope you still have it open in front of you. Verse 14 of 2 Corinthians 5. The love of Christ urges us on. The love of Christ urges us on. That word urges in the original language holds the meaning of to hold together, to press together, to constrain. It's a verb that implies the pressure which confines and restricts as well as controls. And the verb is in present tense, which is very interesting in Greek because it conveys a continual habit of life. Being urged in the present always. The Revised New English Bible translates it, the love of Christ has hemmed us in. Other translations have, the love of Christ compels us. It's like a fire burning. It's like a ring of fire. What can you do but act? You got to do something. In the previous verse, in that passage, Paul talks about himself going to extremes for God. And then being right-minded for the Corinthians. It's as if the apostle is saying here that there are times to be serious and deliberate, and there are times you just need to put on your Nikes and just do it. Get out there on the extremes and share your faith in Jesus, because that's what it takes. How else will people in our lives hear unless we care enough to tell them? I resonate with Eugene Peterson's translation of this text. He says, that's why we work urgently with everyone we meet to get them ready to face God. Working urgently with passion. Passion for those who have never heard. Passion for those who don't get it. It's been over 20 years now since I was attending the Whitworth Institute of Ministry. I heard a presentation by Pastor Heidi Husted. She was the lead pastor at Columbia Presbyterian Church in Vancouver, Washington at that time, and I was just spellbound. She shared her passion for the 4.5 million Wolof people of Senegal, West Africa. She made it clear that the Wolof are a people who live in extreme poverty and they've never had good access to the gospel of Jesus Christ. She told her story of how her church partnered with World Vision to provide a deep bore well so that the people of this one village called Ngari Juf might have clean water, clean, clear, disease-free, abundant water. And I watched the video of Pastor Heidi and her team members when the water first came up in the well, and they all danced together. They danced with the people of the village. I mean, they looked pretty silly, really. But what came through her presentation was their passion as they were compelled by the love of Christ to go and to build long-term relationships with this Wolof village. For them, that's what it was all about. A few years later, in November 2007, 4 of us from Mountain View Presbyterian Church sat with the folks of a village in Senegal called Jogale. And through an interpreter, I was able to express our desire to become their friends, that we wanted to hear what they needed God to do for them, and that we would be honored to pray for them. And we were there, we told them, because Jesus loved us enough to die for us. And we wanted to share that love with them. This village, Jogale, which our congregation soon after that adopted, these dear people we have been in relationship with, they have opened their hearts to us. We have now been in relationship with them for over 15 years. And a lot has happened since that day in 2007. There is now a beautiful medical clinic with 9 employees in Jogale. Over 11,000 people have been seen in the clinic since it opened in August of 2020. More than 130 babies have taken their first breaths in that clinic. It's our prayer, and it continues to be our prayer, that a church will be established in Jogale. I pray for that all the time. And I don't know what's exactly going to happen next. But I do know that the love of Christ urges us to love the people of Jogale by praying for them, by partnering with them and caring for their young and their aged. Careful not to create an unhealthy dependency, honoring their culture and their religion, which is Islam. But always looking for opportunities to live out the love of Jesus in our relationship with them. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's taken a long time to come to this point. And at Mountain View, there are some who are passionate about this mission in Senegal and some who are not. And this is one of several mission initiatives happening in our congregation. Another has to do with our school across the street, Cascade Elementary. I've often repeated the words borrowed from, again, Reggie McNeil, that the academic health of the kids of the school across the street not only shows up on their report cards, but it also shows up on our report card. Their academic health is on our report card. Whether or not kids in the third grade can read at standard, that's on our report card too. There are some in our congregation who are passionate about this, and some who are not. We have had deep relationships forming with the church in Pakistan. I've traveled there 3 times with Reverend Wasim, and there are some really interesting things developing. There are some in our congregation who are passionate about that, and some who are not. Our deacons are leading an initiative to serve people in the Marysville Food Bank on the last Wednesday of every month. Really exciting. Once a month, Mountain View will be hosting the Marysville Food Bank on Wednesday evening. There are some in our congregation who are passionate about this, and some who are not. There are some who are passionate about peacemaking, and some who are not. There are some who are passionate about ministry to youth and children and families, and some who are not. I think all of this is okay. We're not all going to be passionate about the same expression of mission. But my question is this: are there some of us who, frankly, are not passionate about anything? We need to make sure we stay in touch with the love of Jesus. Remembering, as the apostle encourages us here, to keep ever present in our minds that he died for us, so that those who live might live no longer for themselves, but for him who died and was raised for them. Serving. Mission with passion. Fueled by the love of Jesus. May it be so. Lord, may it be so. Let's pray.